This week, we're going to be talking about the 8th edition ITSIMM manual and the new program coming out from BICSI to reflect those changes. Welcome to the show where we tackle the tough questions submitted by installers, project managers, estimators, IT personnel, and even customers. We are connecting at the human level so that we can connect the world. If you're watching this show on YouTube, would you mind hitting the subscribe button and the bell button to be notified when new content is being produced? If you're listening to us on the podcast platforms, would you mind leaving us a 5-star rating? If not a 5-star rating, get in touch with me. Let me know what I need to do to make this just a little bit better. Those couple little steps helps us take on the algorithm, which gets this information out to more people so we can educate, encourage, and enrich the lives of the people in the ICT industry. Thursday nights, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. What are you doing? You know we do a live stream. It's on YouTube and LinkedIn and hopefully Instagram soon, where you can ask your favorite RCDD any question you want about ICT or even career path. But I can hear you now. Chuck, I'm driving my truck. I can't be watching a video. I'll get fired. They're recorded and you can watch them at your convenience. So you don't necessarily have to be there, but you can still watch them. But if you're live, you can ask me questions live. So there's always an advantage to that. On today's show, as you know, we talked about the ITSIMM manual before. It came out, I think, in January or February, something like that. We'll get to clarification on it here in a minute. And then that means that BICSI had to update their whole training program because of the new ITSIMM manual. So I reached out to BICSI and asked them if they would mind doing an interview to discuss just this matter. So they didn't just send me anybody, they sent me Christopher Hobbs. And if you've recognized that name, it's because he's well known within the industry and he's also a repeat person coming on the show. Christopher, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well, Chuck. Thanks for having me back again.
My pleasure. When they said that you would be on the show, I was like, yes. Not that other people couldn't do it, but you and I have good chemistry, and we have a lot of similar backgrounds, so we can have a nice, easy conversation. Now, for those people who are new to the show, because my show's growing, and I'm getting lots of new people on here all the time who may not know of you or know of BICSI, give us the 45-second highlight of that.
Sure. So my name's Christopher Hobbs. I'm an RCDD, a DC-DC, an OSP, an RTPM, and a certified trainer through BICSI. And I've been in the ICT industry for 29 years as of this month. So been in the industry quite a while, and I'm the manager of training provider services at BICSI. So I handle all of our partner programs through our authorized training facilities, our authorized design training providers, and the certified trainers that teach content for both those organizations. And for those of you in the audience that don't know who BICSI is the premier ICT association that provides best practices, standards, and training for the information and communication technology industry.
It's funny because I know of BICSI. I've known of BICSI for years, and obviously the circles I run in knows BICSI. But because I'm reaching out trying to get the young people, I still get every once in a while, what is BICSI? And I'm like, you need to look into them. Because I'm gonna tell you, if you want to learn, because I get questions all the time, Chuck, where do I get fiber training? And stuff like that. And I was like, go to BICSI. They got the best program there for as far as learning how to do inside plant copper and fiber and stuff. They're the ones to go to, and that's
without a doubt.
Exactly. And that's because a lot of your training programs are based on manuals, not that you create. Well, I mean, you guys obviously have a part in that process, but you create committees from subject matter experts. So you get a wide view of the whole entire industry and you put it in a book, and hence the new 8th edition ITSIMM manual just got published. I think it was January. You can correct me if I'm wrong. What has changed in the new ITSIMM manual from the previous one?
So it was released in January. That's when it came out. It was at the Winter Conference. So there are many changes in the 8th edition Information Technology Systems Installation Methods Manual. So that's what ITSIMM stands for, in case people don't know. ITSIMM. Some of the more significant changes are updated premise passive optical networks and centralized fiber optic cabling information. We've got information related to applications such as voice over IP or VoIP, unified communications, modular plug terminated links or MPTLs, which are becoming extremely popular. The implementation and information specific to data center installations has also been expanded. We've got retrofits and upgrades has been upgraded. The information in it, including current IC technologies and applications, updated information and procedures for developing job plans and conducting site surveys based on industry best practices, and additional information on requirements for coordination with other trades and disciplines, which, as we know, that ceiling's getting more and more crowded up there with all of our different trades that we're moving into. And of course, information that's been updated on cutover procedures. We've got information on utility columns and microducts that's been expanded. We've got expanded information related to specialty systems installation, such as building management systems with all of our intelligent buildings and smart cities, electronic safety, security systems, as well as wireless systems. And then last, here's a big one, inclusion of the first ever ITSIMM color photographs and graphics to illustrate installation components, procedures, methodologies applicable to the ICT installation activities. So that's huge for people who need to see things.
I love that part of it because, especially when you talk about the color code, right? And there's other things that benefits as well too, but color photos just makes a document come to life. They just do. So I got a general statement I want to run by you and tell me if it's true or false. And this is what I tell people all the time because I want to make sure I'm giving out right information. So I tell people all the time, look, if you want to learn how to design a system, then the TDMM is your manual. If you want to learn how to actually install the stuff, the ITSIMM is your manual.
So that would be a true statement, but there's a good point to make, and it's with all of our manuals. The manuals are not written in a vacuum. So the Technical Information and Methods Committee, they take a holistic view of all of our best practices and standards. So they're not going to say something that's going to contradict in the ITSIMM that's going to contradict a design that's in the TDMM. So while they are separate, one is for installation, one's for design, they are both designed to work together.
Yes. And with any publication that you're creating, multiple publications, one of the challenges is keeping all those manuals synchronized, especially if they're on different cycles.
Yes. And you'll find errors, they happen, but we do the best to keep those synchronized and to make sure we minimize those errors or any of the conflicts that exist between them.
Exactly. You guys do a great job of that as well. And then when you add another layer on top of that, not only just keeping your manuals concurrent with each other and synchronize with each other, you throw the standards on top of that, which gets changed. That's why we get so many questions in our industry, because they'll read one thing in the standards, and they might be reading from a website that some manufacturer put up that they haven't revised their web page since like 2 standards revisions ago. And now they're reading, the ITSIMM manual. ITSIMM manual says to do something different, like NPTLs. That's a perfect example right there. That used to be called direct connection, right? And now they read the NPTL, and it's got to be tested with a permanent link on one side and a patch cord adapter on the other side. And like, why can't I just use 2 channel adapters? That's how I've been doing it. And that's why you need to read the 8th edition ITSIMM manual, because it's the latest, greatest information,
You're right about that. There are a lot of changes going on in our industry, and it's important to understand that best practices change. That's why we have revision cycles. Information that was valid when you and I started in the industry over 20 years ago, some of that may still be valid, but a lot of it's not. Testing's changed, installation methods have changed. So we need to understand that our industry, the great thing about it is, especially if you're a lifelong learner, is it is constantly changing.
Yeah. Yeah, try to certify that cable with that old ModTap SLT3 continuity tester.
Or an old DTX 1200.
There you go. So when the ITSIMM manual is being revised, how does the committee select what content is going to be included?
It's a good question. So we have the Technical Information and Methods Committee, which I'm going to call the TINM from now on. So I don't have to say the big mouthful.
Gotcha.
It consists of well-established ICT professionals, and they discuss and approve what new or updated ICT information needs to be included in an ITSIMM revision. So an outline is created, and then we pair that with the necessary installation task from what we call the Installation Job Task Analysis, or the JTA. And then material is updated to reflect any new and revised industry standards. So BICSI's best practices manual, such as the ITSIMMs, we do rely on standards, but the contributors that write material will write it above and beyond those standards requirements to present a more holistic view of the ICT industry best practices.
Yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out, because a lot of people don't realize that, because a lot of people know what the standards say because they've read, like I said, through a manufacturer's website, or they sat in a class. But when you actually go read the standards, they're pretty bare bones. When you talk about installation and stuff like that. So, it's just kind of amazing. If someone wants to participate in helping create the next ITSIMM manual, how can they do that?
That's great. So generally, they're invited by each chapter subject matter expert team lead, so a SMETL, as we call them. And if they have the necessary ICT knowledge needed to revise the manual, then they'll be able to participate. So approximately 40 writers were chosen to write for the ITSIMM's 11 chapters for the 8th edition. Other ways for SMEs to participate can be found on the TINM landing page on our BICSI website. So if you're interested, you can go to www.bixi.org, and then you can go click on the committees and you can find TINM and then fill out an application. As with all of our BICSI manuals, these writers did not have to be a member of the TINM subcommittee. Some of the participants are even from other countries outside North America, and they have a diverse pool of contributors to help ensure that we have a balanced level of ICT information from a global standpoint. In the case of the ITSIMM revision, the TINM wanted to ensure that we have different ICT cabling installation methods that are practiced in countries, and they were reflected in the manual.
Another question I get quite often is people. I think one of the reasons people are afraid to join the committee to help with create publications is I think there's this feeling that, oh, I've got to be an RCDD, I've got to be a BICSI technician to do that. You don't have to be certified. You have to be willing. That's the biggest one right there. Willing and knowledgeable, right? And am I wrong there?
So it's like all associations or not-for-profits. People volunteer their time and their talent to be incorporated into manuals, and you don't necessarily have to have an RCDD. As I said before, you have to have the experience and knowledge. Now, that may not translate into actually a credential. It does help, but you can certainly apply to become an individual who's going to support any one of the best practice manuals that are out there.
So my challenge to anybody listening to this show or watching this show, if you have a desire to make this industry better, because a lot of people are willing to complain about our industry. A lot of people are willing to complain about it.
Oh, yes.
But very few people want to stand up and actually make that change. Join the committee. It's a fun process. And even if you think, oh, I don't know enough, you will learn a ton by participating in committees, because you'll be surrounded by subject matter experts who will help you in the areas that you might be weak in, and then you get great contacts for the rest of your life. It's a very rewarding process, and it's not rewarding just for the time you're participating in a committee. I'm still friends with people that I was friends with when I helped with the 8th edition TDMM back in like 95, 97, something like that. I'm still friends with some of them people. And it's a great way to give back to the industry and also learn for free, by the way, right? So I got a question for you that I get asked often as well. And I actually got asked twice this week. I have a couple people, because people hit me up on LinkedIn. Chuck, I took my BICSI technician class and I passed the hands-on, no problem, but I failed the written. That's not unusual because most people lock up with tests, right? And so they're like, well, if I just read the ITSIMM manual, is that enough to get me through the test? Or is there other manuals I got to read and study? What's your thoughts on that, Chris?
So that's a fantastic question. So everything for any of the 4 levels from installer 1 to technician will be found in the ITSIMM. Now, it may seem like a big book to study, but potential students can view the BICSI ICT Cabling Installation Handbook on our website. It conveniently has all 4 levels of well, no, that's not it. That's the
pocket field guides. Yeah,
that's the field guides. This is actually in the credentialing page. So if they go and they'll download the BICSI ICT Cabling Installation Handbook from the website under the credentialing, it'll conveniently show them all of the installation credentials so they can determine where their knowledge and experience fits for the appropriate certification. But then it will also tell them what percentage of the test in each area that they need to study for. Now, the nice thing about having a book is, and I'm old school, I like to read physical books when I'm studying, but if you have the digital copy of the ITSIMM as well as the physical copy, you can take the keywords from the JTA, that's what's going to be tested over, and you can search for those keywords inside the ITSIMM, and you can find out the areas that you really need to concentrate so that you can study for your exam. And the other thing is, if you take a class from BICSI or a BICSI class from one of our authorized training facilities, those students also will have access to study aids. So they will actually be able to go through with the ITSIMM and through the class with review questions and the study aids and give them a much better chance to pass the exam.
And I could hear people now when they're saying, now he wants me to buy the PDF version and the printed version. The beautiful thing about that, it's not double the cost. It's when I buy publications from BICSI, I usually buy both the print and the PDF because it's usually like $40 more for both, or $50 more. I can't remember the exact number off the top of my head. It's not much. It's not much more. And you get both the printed, because there's sometimes, you might want to access some information, but you don't want to lug around the TDMM and the ITSIMM manual with you, right? But if you got the PDF on your computer that's locked, it's got the locked on it, and you Control F, and you can find anything in that document you want.
That's it. And you're right. It's not double the cost. There is a upcharge. I couldn't, tell you off the top of my head what that is, but the advantage is it allows you to search. And if you're like me and I carried around a tablet in my previous career before I came to BICSI, and I had all the manuals loaded on there. So if I had a question or I had an issue, it was quick and convenient to look it up. And I can say, no, I don't think that's quite right. Or, okay, we need to be doing it this way. Great resource to have. And it fits in your pocket because everybody has a cell phone now, and you can load all that on there.
Exactly. Is there a way? Because I know because I've got, like I said, I got the TDMM and the ITSIMM manual and the project management manual and the outside plant manual, and I always bought both copies. One of the things I found, though, is if I'm in an area where I don't necessarily have internet, is there a way to download it to your computer where it still can verify your credentials and allow you to read it, even though you don't have access to internet?
So there is. I'm not certain how that's done. That's an IT function, but I believe you can get an unlock code for that so that you can download that and have access to it without having access to the internet.
Gotcha. Because that's one of my biggest things. Because a lot of times I like to lifelong learning here, just like you, and I like to take advantage of my downtime. So when I'm sitting on an airplane flying, somewhere, I like to read, and yeah, I do like reading novels, but I'd rather read something that's going to help me be a little bit more productive at work and make me, make a little more money, right?
Understood.
Yeah. So you guys just updated the ITSIMM manual. That obviously is going to have some kind of an impact to your actual physical classes, right? So how's that curriculum change impacted your classes?
So I will say our new classes are amazing. The look of the classes, as the JTA is the driver of changes for the ITSIMM and curriculum, we've made some following major changes to our classes. One, there's an increase in performance-based activities in the class. There's a lot more testing, termination, and troubleshooting going on in the classes. And then, of course, we also changed our curriculum to address codes and standards for global differences. One of the complaints that we had before was that the class was too US centric. So we've removed a lot of that to make that class more inclusive, all of our 4 levels of classes more inclusive for our global environment.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that, because it is. I mean, and that just comes from where BICSI came from originally, and then is expanding reach. Start reaching outside the country. People in Egypt don't necessarily care about what the National Electrical Code Book says, But as an installer, you definitely need to know that. So, how have the core competencies changed with the new revision?
So with version 7 of the installation program, the older version, we had a great deal of focus in our technician course, managing projects and professionalism. Whereas in the new version, we have more focus on performing hands-on tasks. So our other core competencies really didn't change, but emphasis is placed on each area were adjusted to align with the changes that were made in the JTA.
Yeah, I remember that when I took my class. Well, actually, I took the T3 class where I became an instructor and a technician at the same time, and I remember that. I remember when I took the exam portion, it was heavy on the management side of that. I remember that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that earlier you were talking about the hands-on component and how it's increased, because most technicians in our field are tactile learners. They learn by putting their hands on stuff, right? What portion of your content is actually hands-on?
So they range anywhere from 30 to 40%. The nice thing is we've added some things into our course content. So things like splice-on connectors, which is big, especially for the fiber and technician classes, and because it's becoming quickly prevalent in our industry.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. One of the challenges of attending a class is it's usually not the employee; it's usually the employer, because they don't want to take that person out of the field. Because if they take them out of the field, that number one, they're going to lose the revenue. Number two, they got to pay for the travel expenses and the cost of the course. So it's a huge investment by employers. So they tend to be real cautious in who they send. as such, I've had a lot of people tell me personally that they just went and took the class on their own. Have you seen this? Have you seen this shift within your students there as well, or is it just something that only I've been seeing?
So, many of our employers are still paying because the advantage is now that we have virtual classes that have no travel expense for the student. So our installer one and our installer two copper are virtual classes that can be attended online. As a matter of fact, we currently only teach those two classes online. With our installer two fiber and our technician course, because of the amount of equipment that's involved, we have to teach those classes, in person.
Yeah, because you guys have the traveling vans where you do where you actually go. I don't know. I think didn't you used to call them the road show or something? I don't remember that. Where you'd actually would go to a customer site and conduct the class there on their site. And because if you didn't do it that way, you either had to send somebody to Tampa or to a local ATF or build an ATF yourself, right? Um, with that,
Correct.
yeah. So the traveling show, it has all the same bells and whistles as the class if they take it into Tampa.
It does. So, we've started offering our installer two fiber and our technician classes in cities outside of Tampa again. COVID really stopped that. So we have open enrollment classes on the East Coast and out West for individuals to sign up and take those classes, the installer two fiber and the installer or the technician class. And those classes are filling up rapidly. They're posted on our website. You can go look at installer two fiber or the technician course. You can find the cities that they're located in. And for the design classes, we're going to have face-to-face before our winter conference in Tampa. And, we expect those to fill up pretty rapidly as well. The nice thing is with the virtual class combination, along with a in-person class for the higher levels, we've seen a lot of students and a lot of organizations filling those classes because of the need that's out there, because of our rapidly expanding industry.
Right. Yeah, especially with all the funds becoming available from the government for building infrastructure and stuff. There's a lot of money being spent, a lot of companies jumping on that process, and you kind of already answered my next question. So I'm assuming that you're seeing a lot more interest in face-to-face classes now that parts of the country are starting to free up and allow us to start to come together again as a class.
We are. A lot more people are attending classes. So we were always filling, even through COVID, when we started doing face-to-face for the fiber class and the technician class prior to version 8 release with the version 7, we were always filling those classes. We were limiting the number of students, which we still do, and we were limiting the number of classes that we were holding. Now we've expanded and we're running in 2 locations on the East Coast and out West so that we can, try to reduce those costs for those individuals and put it closer to where they were at. We're not where we were 3 years ago, where we're going everywhere, but we are expanding. And as things start opening up, we hope to be able to start running even more classes.
Yeah, I've found, because my day job, I'm a trainer. I found that certain areas of the country are more open to face-to-face classes than other areas, and those areas that are opened up, normally I have 10, 12, 15 people in a class, and my last set of classes, I think I had 25 or 30 people in each one of them. There's just an absolute hunger for people, especially technicians. I mentioned earlier, we're tactile learners and we want to put our hands on stuff. Virtual classes are great and they're always going to serve a purpose. But I think, for the technician side, tactile is really going to be what makes most people learn better.
So the good thing about our virtual classes, they are tactile. They
Oh, really?
actually get shipped blocks and the materials for them to be able to do the hands-on portion of those classes. So it's not 35 hours of sitting in front of a screen and someone going to be feeding information to you from a water hose. They're actually still doing the hands-on portion of those classes. They're just doing it where they're located at.
That's cool. That's cool. So the student has to have a webcam and I'm assuming a microphone and stuff.
That's correct. So they'll have a webcam and a microphone. They will have to have some basic installation tools for the installer one and the installer two copper. The installer two copper, we send a BICS tool to them so that they can actually go through and terminate the gigabits blocks that we send. So it's a hands-on tactile class just as much as it would be if it was in person.
Very cool. Do they have to send the BICS tool back?
They do not. It's theirs.
Nice. Nice. So you get free tools. I like that. I like that. Let me ask you another question. So when you're doing your virtual classes, does everybody have their webcam on while their instructor is teaching, or is it just only the instructor has the webcam on?
No, we try to encourage everyone having a webcam on, so that generates more class participation. And it's also important for the instructor that's facilitating the course to be able to actually see if the students are paying attention.
Yes.
You know, when we shifted to a virtual environment, there was a huge change, and a lot of people try to multitask or do other things, and then knowledge doesn't get transferred. So with the webcam on, the instructor has the ability to see if students are engaged, much like you would do in a real class.
Right.
Are they interested? Am I boring them? Do I need to ask questions? Do we need to take a break? All of those things that happen in a real class, we try to mimic those and do those in the virtual environment as well.
I love that, because you're right. As an instructor, you are always reading your audience. You know, you're looking for body language and looking to see people, because most technicians, they're used to being up on their feet all day long and walking around, climbing ladders. You put them in a chair for 8 hours, it's a struggle for a lot of them to stay awake. And it's not because they're lazy, it's because they're used to being in perpetual motion, right? And it's a challenge for them. Yeah. So a long time ago, when I first got involved with BICSI, a long time ago, right when I got my RCDD, I remember hearing somebody say that the average educational level of a technician was an 8th grade level. What do you think that is today?
So, you know, I'm not really sure where that come from. And I know that our ITSIMM is written to a 10th grade level, and the TDMM, the OSPDRM, and the TPMM are written to a 12th grade level. So not really sure where the 8th grade level came from.
Yeah, and I think, you know, especially nowadays, especially because when you look at contractors or people in the field, yes, they pull cable, terminate cable, pull fiber, terminate fiber, but they're also getting into installing access control devices and IP cameras and stuff. And I think they're more educated now than they were back then. You know, there was a term that somebody once called cable installers. They called them knuckle draggers, and I'm like, you don't know many cable pullers, do you?
Not anymore. You know, the days of pull cable, cash check is going away.
Yes.
People have to become integrators. So they have to understand how all these disparate systems work together. And if they don't, then they're going to go the way of the dodo, or, you know, other contractors who've not been successful, or individuals who are not going to grow in this industry if they don't learn about the different technologies that are out there, which is great about the new ITSIMM, because a lot of those technologies are discussed in there.
Yeah, I like to say, if you don't keep up, you'll get put away with that same person who's the typewriter repairman, right?
Yep, exactly. You don't see too many IBM Selectric repairmen running around these days.
No, and usually if you do, it's usually because they're restoring it for like a museum quality thing, not because there's a huge market for people buying typewriters, right? So I mentioned earlier about how the government's releasing a bunch of funds to upgrade the infrastructure, which I think is absolutely great, because the infrastructure needs to be upgraded for us. Have you seen this impact your classes, for as far as interest in your classes, people wanting to attend the classes?
Sure. So, you know, the amazing thing about our installation program, as I said before, is we've got 4 levels of classes that will assist with installers in understanding infrastructure installation. You know, for individuals who are just coming in our industry, the installer 1 is going to cover basics of copper and fiber systems. For those that've got a little bit more experience, we've got the installer 2 copper, which is going to focus on copper systems testing, installation and troubleshooting, and the installer 2 fiber, which focuses on fiber system installation, testing, and troubleshooting. And then lastly, you know, those that've got 3 or more years of experience who've been in the industry, you know, this is for our team leaders and you know, projects that are going to have advanced testing or troubleshooting of copper and fiber-based systems are going to look at the technician for that. You know, taken as a whole, each of those classes are going to assist a person in the ICT industry to gain valuable skills and knowledge that they can directly apply to working on federal projects. And that's going to be important. Without having knowledge and background, and much like our systems laid out like an apprenticeship program, you've got to have a base to start with. And we offer a career path, and not many organizations can offer a clear career path, because you can take a kid that's coming in from high school, start them out in installer 1, and advance them through their career up to a technician. And then typically the next jump is to a project manager or a designer. And we, you know, have that track for those individuals to do that. But everybody's got to start somewhere, and the installation program is a great place to start.
Are there school districts that offer the installation program for like vocational education, like shop class and stuff?
So not at the high school level currently, but we do have some community colleges that are doing it, as well as some other organizations that are not-for-profits that do job retraining to bring individuals with skill sets that are not being utilized or may not be valid anymore, and they're retraining them into the ICT industry. So they're bringing them in at the installer one level, training those individuals so that they can give them a career.
That's cool. Last question. Is there anything new on the horizon for BICSI? Well, I mean, there's always something new on the horizon. What's new on the horizon?
Oh, there's a lot of new things that are going on. There's a lot of JTAs that are being revamped and everything, because as we said earlier, when this program started, we have our manuals, our classes, our credentials are updated. Every 3 to 5 years, we update those to maintain current information with what's out there in the ICT industry, because things change. So there's lots of things coming. We've got project management. We've got the design for RCDD, is coming down the road in a couple of years. So we are constantly moving and changing. So we're not sitting on our laurels and saying, great, we produced one great thing and looking at that. We are always constantly looking and changing.
Yeah, and I think the thing that really showcases that the most was COVID, because you
Oh,
guys
yes.
shifted from, pre-COVID to doing, virtual class COVID. You did it really quick. I think you guys led the industry, because I know my company struggled with that, and I think you guys were already it's like almost you already thought about it or something in advance. Because you guys shifted pretty quickly on that.
Well, there's a lot of great people inside BICSI, and there's an amazing amount of experience and knowledge. And when you combine all that experience and knowledge together with a drive to perform, and that's what we did. We had a mandate. What are we going to do? We can't just shut down. We need to keep providing education. We need to keep driving our industry forward, especially at a time when you look at data centers and other facilities that are being driven even more because of COVID. What can we do to help drive that and help assist those individuals with education? And the only way to do that was through the virtual learning environment. So we did pivot pretty quickly to get classes out and get people going. And like everything, there was growing pains. But I think that the individuals who attend our classes, our design classes, or the installer one or the installer two copper, would say that it's pretty amazing what we were able to do and not have a huge technology uplift to do that.
Yeah, and it showed. You guys handled it, I think, excellent, and you were leading the industry on teaching everybody else how to do that. So,
well, I appreciate that, Chuck. I'm sure that some of my coworkers will really be happy to hear that when they see this interview.
oh yeah, absolutely. They did an excellent job. They really did. Because there's a lot of frustration, right? Because we went from, and that's one thing. One of the positive things that came out of COVID was it forced the business, not necessarily just our industry, but business, to think outside the box, right? There's a lot of companies before who would not consider remote office spaces or remote training and stuff, and then they were forced to do this, and like, hey, you know what? This isn't so bad. And if you set up for it right and you do it right, there's actually a positive impact here. And there's like, for me, it's virtual classes really fit good for me, because those remote areas where I can't fill up a class. So it's not cost efficient for me to fly there and travel and expenses and all that stuff. But if I do a virtual class, I can still do the same thing, give them that training, but lessen that impact. So it forced a lot of companies to think outside of the box. And that was one of the positive things that came out of COVID. So
Definitely. I think that's why our virtual classes are so popular and they fill up, because people realize, hey, I don't have to travel to Tampa, or Orlando or Vegas or any of the other places that we hold classes. I can work it in, and I can take a week off, and I can stay at my home or my home office, wherever that may be at. I can run through the course material, get some really good tools out of it that I can use for the future, and then study for my credential and pass the test, and not have to have the extra added expense of travel.
There you go. And there's a lot more options, because there's usually, at least with us, there's more virtual classes scheduled than face-to-face classes. So they have more options to pick from. And like you said, it's a lot easier because you don't necessarily have to travel to go do that. So that's the best part of that.
That's correct. And we offer them in different time zones. I think we're actually looking at offering some classes in global time zones for people to sign up in. So that'll be coming for those that are watching your podcast. Anybody that's outside the United States, take a look at the BICSI website, because a lot of those global classes are going to be coming out for us to facilitate.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because when I started the whole podcast vlog thing, I didn't really envision having an audience outside of the US. But when I look at my stats, I'm pulling people in from Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and I'm running my second TDMM study group now. And probably half of them are from the Middle East. And they, I mean, this shows you how much dedication they have, because we do it 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is about 2 a.m. in the morning their time. So they're getting up in the middle of the night to participate in the video calls and stuff. So, I'm glad that it's, that we're opening up and we're starting to think more globally now than U.S. centric in our industry.
Well, Chris, that's been a big push.
Yep. Chris, it's a pleasure having you on as always. We got to have you on again soon.
Chuck, I look forward to it.
Take care, my friend. Till next time, everybody, remember, knowledge is power.
That's it for this episode of today's podcast. We hope you were able to learn something. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future content. Also, leave a rating so we can help even more people learn about telecommunications. Until next time, be safe.